Hello, everybody. Good evening. We are tonight doing another Instagram Live with Dr. Ferraduro. She is an acupuncturist who specializes in reproductive acupuncture. She should be joining us shortly. I am so excited to be speaking to her again. Here's a request and we'll have her join, and then I'm going to introduce myself and she can introduce herself and her services as well. Let's see if that worked. All right. Dr. Duro, how are you?
Hi.
Hello. Trying to adjust my thing for the lights here. All right. So welcome everyone who has joined us this evening for this Q&A regarding fertility and acupuncture. So excited everybody could be here. We have had some questions submitted earlier, which is awesome. So we'll get to those and answer them. But first of all, I just want to introduce myself. I am Dr. Ellen Wood. I am one of the 12 reproductive endocrinology and fertility physicians at IVFMD. My office is in the Cooper City office. We have offices from Central Florida in Vieira all the way down to Miami with 4 in vitro labs, and we provide full service, fertility services for whatever you might need. I am one of the major believers in adjuvant therapy and complementary treatments that complement my fertility services, and that is why I love doing these Q&As and these Instagrams with Dr. Duro. She provides these services in this Broward County, Miami-Dade area for us, but I'm a big believer that she can enhance every single fertility treatment that I provide with her services as well. So Dr. Duro, introduce yourself, your practice, and what you do.
Thank you, and I'm really honored to work with you and all of your staff. You guys are amazing, and I love coming to transfers with patients and just seeing everybody. But I think that this is very important to do this. A lot of people still don't understand how acupuncture can actually help with fertility. It's been actually traced back to the Song Dynasty. That's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, where they found the first writings of Chinese medicine used for fertility treatment. So it's something that we would love to kind of get the word out about. It's helpful for men and women, and whatever stage you're in. So we do work with patients when they're in the holding pattern of about to embark on a cycle. They're not really sure what's going on with their bodies, but they know they're frustrated and it's been taking way too long. So we definitely try to optimize everything, blood flow, helping with stress relief, all those things as much as possible. And in general, just working with pain as well. We work with endometriosis, PCOS, and all that as well. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here too.
Yeah, no, it's such a wonderful complementary service to what we do, because as physicians, our hands are tied. We have drugs, we have prescriptions, and we know our drugs, we know our treatments. However, there's so much more that goes into fertility, other than just writing a prescription here, take this shot, and teaching you how to do it. There is the aspect of it's the entire life picture. So we try to incorporate all this with our lifestyle coaches, with our recommendations for acupuncture, adjuvant therapy, our supplements. Anything that incorporates into your lifestyle is going to, find its way into your eggs and sperm. So it's a journey. So I am going to brag right now. Okay. So here is my medal. Okay. From the 125th Boston Marathon that I on last Monday. Okay.
Oh, congrats. That's awesome.
0.2 miles. Okay. I did it for the 4th time in Boston. So
that's amazing.
A plug for myself.
Congrats. And this wasn't on a treadmill either. It was actually
I did that virtual on the treadmill. I was actually started in Hopkinton. I ended up in Boston, and made it through. Wasn't my best race ever. My IT band was not loving the hills, but it was my 3rd in-person Boston. I think I may be retired from that for now.
That's awesome. Now you need to come for some acupuncture.
My daughter was at the finish line with all of her friends. So
that's awesome.
I know it was super exciting. It's like another bucket list thing to check off. But when you think about training for these things, and you think about how long it takes. I know your husband's a triathlete. It's just like a fertility journey. You just have to keep your eye on the prize here. What do I want to accomplish? Mm-hmm. accomplish. And you know, I had a patient in the office today, and she saw me. We did an initial evaluation. She actually got pregnant, like without anything, like I don't know, my positive vibes. And she miscarried. So they think she was 39. It may have been just a bad egg that was ovulated. That's what we told her. Back in the office, just got a period, ready to get back on that horse. She's I haven't even had time to grieve for this. She's like, I know I'm 39. I just need to I have a goal. And I'm like, the best way you can do it is just keep your eye on the prize, and this is what you want to accomplish, and just keep gathering the people on your team, okay, in order to help you with that goal, no matter who it might be. You know, your acupuncturist, you know, even just family support. I find it so sad that some patients don't even reveal to their families that they're doing fertility treatment, because families, you know, can be so supportive in this. And if you're trying to hide it from them, it detracts from helping you through it, you know. And I think, you know, everyone that helps anybody through any type of training period, any type of journey they're going through, whether it's school, trying to have a baby, you know, it's so important to gather your team members. And I think that's where, you know, your services come in, because I know you work very closely with the patients, and really help them from even at just a psychological standpoint for support and all of the success that you've had, you know, over the years with patients that you know, are dealing with this struggle. So I've got the questions that Shirley had sent earlier, and so we can get started with those. All right, so interesting one. Is it safe to walk 1 hour a day during IVF? Okay, well, I would have to say, depending on how fast you walk, it's fine. I mean, if you're kind of a power walker, you're really not even bouncing. But when we're talking about exercise, okay, and fertility treatment and doing it, I think that moderation is key. Okay, so my personal perspective is that 30 minutes of exercise, aerobic, not getting yourself into these high orange and red zones with the heart rate, because when you get your heart rate into these orange and red zones, great, it's great for your heart, it's great for training, okay, great for training, not great for fertility. Because what happens when you get your heart rate so high? There is a steal effect from the blood flow, and it goes to your heart and your muscles. It gets stolen from your stomach, your kidneys, your ovaries, and your uterus. So you do not want to be doing high intensity exercise. However, low impact exercise, walking, just having a brisk walk, getting your heart rate up a little bit, nothing strenuous, 3 to 5 times a week for 30 minutes, super healthy, okay? What we don't like when you're going through an IVF stim is bouncing, okay? Like, I mean, your ovaries are getting big. We don't want them bouncing and twisting. So, you know, we don't like any type of
Trampolines are not good.
that trampoline place, you know,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
trampoline place.
Yeah. No, not good.
You know, those type of activities. But, you know, walking, I mean, light biking, we're talking cruiser, we're not talking Tour de France. You know, swimming, not, you know, Olympics. I mean, all of these things are helpful just for blood flow to the entire body, but we don't want the body to have the steal effect of the blood away from your reproductive organs. So when I have somebody who has been an intense exerciser, okay, and sometimes I don't even realize it because, you know, they just think it's so normal, but when I have somebody who's doing those type of activities, okay, I'm like, look, we need to cut back, and I have no other way to get your blood to go back to those areas except sending you to Dr. Duro. Okay, that's what I do. That's what I do. We like, you know, say, hey, we need to like stimulate those nerves that send the blood to your pelvis, and that's what the acupuncturist can do for us. So, what are your thoughts on exercise?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pumped out to your vital organs. I guess that your body doesn't consider your uterus and your ovaries so vital for survival.
It does.
So,
it does.
Yeah, it doesn't prioritize them.
You know, it's not going to help you, and you're being chased by like a tiger or something.
Mm-hmm. But 20 minutes walking should be fine, right? I mean, like slow walking, you know,
20
like
minutes. I mean, I it's perfect. That's perfectly fine. You just You can keep your heart rate in a green zone.
Yeah.
Heart rate monitor, just keep it in an aerobic zone. There's no steal effect from that. And so I got a question here. Why is progesterone and estrogen stopped at 10 weeks? 10 weeks Saturday and nervous to stop. Okay. So I have to assume that the person who is taking the progesterone and the estrogen has done some sort of controlled IVF cycle. Like their ovaries have been put to sleep, they've done a frozen embryo transfer, or they've been a recipient and have received an embryo. So the reason that we choose, I mean, I actually use 12 weeks. Some practices use 10, which is fine. But the reason we choose that is because the placenta needs to make those hormones. And the placenta starts making progesterone and estrogen on its own really by 8 weeks. And then as the placenta continues to grow and grow and grow, most of the time it has taken over by 10 weeks. Okay, now our practice, at least me, I go a little overkill. I take out my hormones until 12 weeks to really make sure that placenta is in good working order. Yeah. Some people have really lazy placentas. I mean, like
it's fired up.
But some people have lazy placentas. So if it's a frozen transfer cycle, we usually will check an estrogen and progesterone level at 12 weeks and make sure that that placenta is making hormone. And then we cut the hormones in half. Then we check another level of estrogen and progesterone at 13 weeks, make sure the level stays steady, and then we're comfortable. Yep, placenta's got this, and we stop. So 10 weeks, again, some practices use 10, and if you get hormone levels drawn and your placenta, okay, looks like based on your blood tests is making enough hormone, perfectly safe to stop those hormones because your placenta's, doing it for you. You don't need the hormones. Now, it's also different if you're doing a fresh transfer. So if you've had a fresh embryo transfer, okay, you have ovaries that are in addition to the placenta, your ovaries are still making those hormones. So you've still got a little ovarian production as the placenta takes over and you're supplementing. So you can stop it at 10 weeks, earlier if, again, you have a fresh transfer. But with the frozen transfers, again, I'm just ultra conservative. So we take it out to 12 to 13. But you can feel pretty comfortable that the majority, 95% of placentas are in good working order by 10 weeks and you should be fine. So I wouldn't be nervous. Okay, so we got that one. Does low testosterone mean low sperm count? No, it does not. Because the sperm and the testosterone are produced by two different cells. Okay, so you may not have the ideal testosterone level, but your sperm count could be fine. So you can have a decent sperm count but low libido, and they do not go hand in hand. What we do worry about is if your hormone level of something called FSH is elevated, meaning that your brain is putting out too much hormone, telling your testicles to work, and your testicles not making testosterone, and it's also not making sperm. So they're not one and the same. Like you can't get a low testosterone cell. Oh, I'm infertile. That's absolutely not true. They do not go hand in hand. You need to get a semen analysis done in order to accurately assess your sperm. Okay. 1 hour Monday through Friday walking is okay. Again, light walking. I personally stick to 30 minutes. I think 30 minutes 5 times a week is perfectly fine. And yes, she did a frozen embryo transfer, but yeah, your placenta should be working by 10 weeks.
Yeah, and the weather's nice and cool now, so it's better.
Yeah.
Cooler.
Apparently today was the last day, according to the news, that we're having this lovely weather outside. This humidity is coming back on the weekend. That's what.
Yeah, I'm just chilling out here, and I'm enjoying it. I'm like, let's do the live outside again. I love it.
That's the guy on 10 said this morning. He's like, sorry, it's going to be sticky and muggy by the weekend.
Oh.
All right.
Well, it was nice while it lasted.
It was nice while it had the fall. We had fall.
No.
Okay, so we got a question here. Is it okay to take Metanics and prenatal vitamins with folic acid, or is it better to just Metanics? You can't really overdose on folic acid. Okay, now, what we want to look at as far as folic acid is concerned, okay, is the type of folic acid that you are ingesting. So, there are some people who have a defect in an enzyme that metabolizes folic acid. So there's certain recommendations that the government puts forth and says, all right, if you take this much folic acid, your baby should not have a birth defect. However, in a certain patients, if your body cannot absorb the folic acid you are taking, you're not taking enough, because even though you swallowed the pill, it did not go through your stomach and it did not get absorbed and metabolized into your bloodstream. So if you have this certain enzyme defect, then you need to be taking a more absorbable form of folic acid. The problem is that whereas when this was identified 15 or 20 years ago, we could test your blood for this enzyme. However, insurance companies stopped covering the testing for this enzyme. So I would test patients and I'd say, hey, you don't metabolize folic acid properly. You need to take this Botanix, a more absorbable folic acid. You need to take this type of prenatal vitamin, a more absorbable folic acid. And so we would identify patients who needed it and people that could take, an over-the-counter whatever brand, because they didn't have the enzyme problem and they could take whatever they wanted. They didn't have a problem absorbing it. However, insurance companies started denying it. So to try and combat this, you just had to make the assumption, at least me, that everybody had the enzyme problem, okay? So if you make the assumption that everybody possibly could not be breaking down their folic acid and absorbing it properly, just have everybody take the more absorbable folic acid.
Like everybody's vitamin D deficient.
Right, everybody. Just treat everybody like they're not absorbing your basic old folic acid. So if everybody is treated with the quatrefolate in a prenatal vitamin or methylated folate, like is in the Botanix, okay, then we won't have a problem. I've had 4 or 5 patients, I think 5, that have been taking the prescribed, recommended folic acid, and they have had, unfortunately, a neural tube defect. I mean, we give out prenatal vitamins in our office like candy, okay? And everybody is on them. And when you have a patient come back to you and say, I lost my baby because of spina bifida, I lost my baby because of lost my baby because of neural tube defect. You're like, weren't you taking those prenatal vitamins? And they're like, yeah, Dr. Wood, I was every day. And then you check them and they have this methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase deficiency in that enzyme. You're like, wow. They were taking what they were supposed to and their body didn't absorb it. So that's where I got really kind of on my soapbox and be like, you know what? Like, just assume everybody has it and just take better folic acid. Now, if you know you have this deficiency in this MTHFR enzyme, okay, take the Botanix and take the prenatal vitamin. We're covered. We're good. The other thing about the methylated folate is that even if you megadose on it, sometimes without the cofactors, without the B6 and the B12 to go with it, you still can't absorb it. So that's why Botanix has a combination of the methylated folate plus B6 and B12 to help your body absorb it. So absorption is everything when we're dealing with, vitamins. So a question here, post-op gastric sleeve, 6 months, currently anti-weight, any recommendation of vitamins for preconception? As I said, a prenatal vitamin with methylated folate or quatrefolate. Because what happens is, okay, so when you eat spinach, okay, you're eating folate, okay? It gets then broken down by this enzyme to folic acid, which is again broken down to methylated folate, and then gets absorbed, okay? Now, your folate can't get broken down to the folic acid and the methylated folate if you've got a deficiency in the enzyme. So let's just start off with the more absorbable form so we really don't have to deal with the issue, especially patients with a gastric sleeve. That is one of the pregnancy complications in patients post-gastric sleeve is sometimes, vitamin deficiencies, anemia, things like that. What's your experience with gastric sleeve, Dr. Duro?
Definitely. I mean, across the board, when we see the labs, we're like, well, and then I had a patient who had a gastric sleeve operation. They've been taking Flintstones. Actually, they were told to take Flintstone vitamins after this procedure, and they kept taking them. And I was looking at it going, wait, but actually the vitamin D was probably the lowest I've ever seen. I mean, everything was just rock bottom. And definitely, I think there needs to be other forms sometimes, like liquid forms, maybe powder, that sort of thing, to be easily assimilated, if the patient is not absorbing what they're taking in. I mean, it can be pretty detrimental, I think. And men too, right? I mean, we've had male patients who've done gastric sleeve or trying to get pregnant, and they have low sperm count, but also the D level is super low.
Yeah, I mean, nutrition is very, very key, but hopefully, again, at least the patients I have seen who have gastric sleeve, they have really, really proactive bariatric surgeons. And so most of the time, bariatric surgeons have nutritionists that work with them. They monitor these vitamin levels. I mean, the majority of bariatric surgeons that I kind of have seen, I mean, hopefully everyone who's had bariatric surgery does have follow-up like this, but they have nutritionists, they have support as far as, yeah, you eat less and you lose weight, but if you're planning pregnancy, there are certain things, vitamins you need to make sure that you're ingesting, because yes, you're at a healthier weight, but you could be at a healthier weight nutritionally deficient. That could harm the health of your pregnancy. I think that has to be, addressed specifically in patients with the gastric sleeve.
Before getting pregnant, for sure.
Yeah, definitely before getting pregnant. All right, let's go here. What else we got here as far as
the Hashimoto's TPO of 130 doing IVF? How do you guys work with that?
I mean, okay, so most patients, who have Hashimoto's may have some sort of hypothyroid picture. So if the TSH is okay, some physicians will actually even just supplement with a little, just a teeny bit of Synthroid, even though their TSH is okay. Most of the time we'll give thyroid hormone if the TSH is above 2.5 to lower the TSH level. But in a patient with thyroid antibodies, just a tiny bit of supplementation of Synthroid might be beneficial to the health of their pregnancy in the long term, even if their level doesn't say that they actually need it. Now, what we have to remember is that if you have one autoimmune disorder, like thyroid peroxidase antibodies, this could also mean you have other autoimmune disorders. So I do like to check patients who are positive for any type of autoimmune antibody and look for immunologic issues that deal with fertility as well that might cause the embryo not to implant. So I do evaluate patients for if they have thyroid antibodies, where even their thyroid's functioning fine, if they have thyroid antibodies, to make sure they don't have additional immunologic issues that may compromise the embryo implanting. So I always take it into account when we're evaluating a patient at what exactly they need before they begin their treatment. So I think that's important to know, which is why we check all of our patients. I mean, a TPO is a panel that we do on everybody. So we know whether the patient has antibodies or not, and then we do watch the thyroid very closely.
And there's some research that we've worked with a lot of women with Hashimoto's who have gone off gluten completely, and gluten-free diet in 6 months, their antibodies are
that's so cool. We just got that today. My nurse got a call from somebody who's thyroid antibodies, and she said she's made all these lifestyle changes, and she wants to know if her antibodies have gone down, and she wants to draw them. I said to my nurse, I said, knock yourself out. I'm like, whatever, we can draw them. I go, I said to myself, I'm not aware of anything that can make your antibodies go down. Now, what we do know is that the immune system is a highly dynamic organ. So it just changes. It changes like the wind. Like you can be healthy one day and have your body attacking itself the next day. So because the body is such a highly dynamic organ, that's why I said to my nurse, I said, sure, let's see if her body's changes, if they've got her antibodies to go down. And again, it just means your body's happier. It's not attacking itself anymore. So I do think that it is interesting that the gluten-free thing helps.
Yeah, and the vitamin D levels actually went up, which was interesting because now they're absorbing a little more. So you never know. I mean, it's worth a try, I think in a lot of patients. that have celiac also have Hashimoto's, so there's some correlation there, but it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and everybody's different. I've had patients who had celiac disease, gone gluten-free, and they've had all sorts of other issues that I've been like, that it just, they don't correlate at all. Question is, can I doctor, when I'm your patient, what estrogen level do you typically look for on day 5 of stim? And does it change if you only have one ovary? I need your estrogen level at least 100. I'm like, hopefully it's 100. I get a little discouraged if we're still under 100 by 5 days of injectable medicine. And again, most of the time, patients with one ovary, their ovary kind of steps up to the plate. So again, I'm happy with 100, and I'm disappointed if it's less than that. But if I see stuff on the ovary that has potential to grow, I'll keep going. So let's go with over 100.
Yeah. We get the beta question a lot too, like what's the healthy beta when you first test, and it ranges so much, you know. But, yeah.
Again, but I just had a lady come back. Okay, they were looking for baby number 2. Okay, you know, one miracle. I mean, I dole out miracles, you know, one at a time. But they were looking for miracle number 2. So hey, I'm not saying it can't happen, but her first beta was 6.
Oh wow.
6. And then the next one jumped to like 50. The next one jumped to 300. Okay, and then 9 months later, she's a baby in her arms, and you're like,
wow,
6.
Oh, it took a little while, but yeah, it's a little slow going.
And you just like, every time we drew the beta on her, because I drew like probably 5 of them, like, wow. And then every milestone we reach, you're like, wow. So, you know, levels, we always take them into consideration, but they're not the be all end all. Like I had a patient last year who had a very disappointing estrogen level of 1,000. And I'm thinking, this is weird. Okay. And we end up getting 28 eggs from her. Like that doesn't make sense. I mean, you would want 28 eggs. You think their estrogen level would be like 6,000 or 7,000. And you don't know what you're going to get. And this lady she's pregnant now, and she ended up with 12 frozen embryos. You're thinking, wow. Like that didn't match at all. Like she had beautiful eggs, beautiful embryos, but her estrogen level was literally terrible. I mean, and you just kind of got to go with it. You got to take everything into consideration. You're like, all right, well, let's just kind of see what happens. And that's kind of what we have to do, because we have kind of our norms and what we expect. But even if something is kind of out of the norm, it still can end up good. So
yeah, the numbers are not everything, and
the
I know
numbers are not everything.
Yeah.
As I constantly tell patients, okay, I treat patients and not paper.
Yeah.
I take the paper into consideration, but I treat how your body responds to the treatment and not what it says to me on paper. I had a lady with an AMH level that was, like, I mean, literally pitiful. I mean, less than 1. Meaning that, you know, we may not even get 3 or 4 eggs. She ends up giving me 15 eggs and 3 healthy embryos. You're like, huh?
Yeah.
With an AMH less than 1. I mean, and you might go to some doctors and they're like, oh, no. You can't do IVF. Your AMH level's too bad. It's like, well, try it. And then if it doesn't work, you're kind of like, all right, well, it didn't work because your AMH level's low. But we really, 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 I think, and again, I can't blame anybody for getting focused on numbers, but you really can't look at a number and say, this is not possible or that is not possible, okay, because of what it says on paper. Now, if you try something and it doesn't work, you can say, well, why didn't it work? Well, because this number says this. But I don't think you can say the opposite. And I have just been constantly surprised year after year when I just give something a try and you just say, wow, I can't believe that worked. You have to say it seriously. And again, it doesn't work some of the time. Yeah, and we admit that, but at least we tried. But in those patients where it did work, if we had just not tried, they wouldn't have the baby. It's always been my philosophy.
That's why I love you guys so much, that you think outside the box sometimes, you know, with those things.
That philosophy, just because stuff, I just can't believe that some of it has just gone well, and you go, wow.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and then the longer you see patients, you never, you know, it's like you never say never, because
eternal.
Yeah, Exactly.
All right, so an interesting question here. Should exploratory lap be done? Like, that's a little radical. After 2 failed frozen transfers of normal embryos. I'm not really sure why we would do an ELAP. No, if you have really big fibroids, okay? So really big fibroids, yes, we need to cut your belly open with an exploratory laparotomy, and then take out those fibroids, fix the uterus, and then go and try another frozen embryo transfer. So that would be an indication for a laparotomy. Not really seeing any other indication except if there was some sort of maybe, say, extensive endometriosis, you had normal embryos still in the freezer, maybe cleaning up your endometriosis might improve the chances of, you know, the body receiving the embryo. There is some literature, if you've got a big uterus with adenomyosis, I mean, I don't do this type of surgery, but it's out there. Resecting adenomyosis might make the uterus more receptive to a healthy embryo, but it's definitely not something I would go to as far as if I had someone with 2 failed frozen embryo transfers, doing surgery on them with a big open surgery. That's laparoscopy. I'm not even sure whether I'd even consider that. It just doesn't seem to make much sense. The only reason I would consider doing a laparoscopy after 2 failed transfers is I would do a hysterosalpingogram, and maybe they have a blocked tube. And so if you have a blocked tube, that blocked tube could be harboring toxic fluid. And that toxic fluid might be poisoning the inside of your uterus. Again, I have had this situation before where, you know, we have been doing IVF, so we have not been focused on the fallopian tubes. And we missed that fallopian tube had been blocked with fluid in it. And once, you know, we put that into the differential saying, well, why didn't this work? Then we considered a surgery before we put in more embryos. And sure enough, we removed that fallopian tube that was harboring the infection or the toxicity, causing the environment inside the uterus to be negative for a healthy embryo. And the patient subsequently conceived and had a baby. So, you know, there are indications for surgery after a failed transfer with a normal embryo, but, you know, I just wouldn't like say, hey, let's cut your belly open, or hey, let's look in your belly. Like I would say, we're going in to remove a tube, we're going in to remove fibroids, we're going into, you know, remove really advanced endometriosis and see whether that chills out your immune systems and stop attacking the embryo. I'd also make sure that you had immunologic workup done to make sure that your body didn't reject a normal embryo, to make sure that you had you know, your immune system taken care of also. So that's what I would recommend before I would cut your belly open. Hopefully you're listening, and hopefully it answered the question. Another question here we've got. When I become pregnant through IVF, can I have a tubal reversal during the C-section? I don't think your OB is going to do that, okay? Number one, normally tubal reversals are only done by subspecialists like myself. Most of us are not really even doing them anymore because instead of doing tubal ligation, they're actually removing tubes, so we don't really have any tubes to reverse. It's usually a microsurgical procedure done either laparoscopically with a robot or with a microscope in order to repair the tubes. So at the time of a C-section, I would have to say there is probably no chance that your OBGYN would consider reversing your fallopian tubes. But I can never say never, but that's just not something that I've ever heard of being done. All right. Is it okay to take Unison and B6 for morning nausea every day? Okay. Well, yes. Both of those medications are in a medication called Digleges and Bongesta, and they're both been seen to be safe in pregnancy. Now, I wouldn't take them every morning for nausea. I would take them at night for nausea.
I'm tired.
Because Unison is a sleep medicine. So the idea when these medicines are prescribed is that they are prescribed and they're taken at night. And then you gauge how your nausea is the following morning. And if you're still nauseous, you up the dose a little bit the next night up to the maximum dose that's recommended. So you take it at night, it helps you sleep, and then you see how you're nauseous the next day. I would not recommend that we take it in the morning because you'll be at work.
Yeah, that's it. Definitely don't drive to work and take.
Yeah, you'll be sleeping. But it does help. I mean, I have to say 80% of patients who take the Unison and the B6 takes the edge off the nausea. I mean, definitely it helps you be more functional during the day. Nothing is a perfect cure except time, except getting out of the first trimester. Nothing is a perfect cure, but it really does take the edge off of that pukey feeling. And I have patients who just are thrilled that they feel so much better once they begin taking that type of medication. All right, next we got chances of preterm labor after 2 leaps. Well, you know what? It depends on how aggressive your gynecologist was who did your leaps. So your cervix is normally 5 centimeters, okay? So you take a centimeter off, now we're down to 4 when you do a leap, because a leap stands for Loop Electrical Excision Procedure, LEEP. What it is meant to do is to chop off precancerous cells so you do not get cervical cancer, okay? We're not doing this much anymore, okay? Because we realized that most of these precancerous lesions in the cervix go away on their own. I mean, like when I was 20 years ago, my God, we just chopped things off the cervix, chop, 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 chop. I mean, it's like cut the cancer, cut the cancer, cut the cancer. And now, 20 years later, it's like, no, wait. So I have a patient who has a low-grade squamous intraepithelial lesion. Okay, so it's like 3 steps before cancer. Okay, and the OB is like, yeah, get pregnant. I'm like, you can't get her pregnant. She has, I mean, my nurses are like, she's an abnormal pap smear. And I have the Mount Sinai residents with her, like, nope. Recommendations is don't touch it, just wait, let them get pregnant. I mean, and as like non-doctors who do pap smears all day, like we can't get somebody pregnant with an abnormal pap smear, but recommendations have changed because we've realized that a lot of these lesions regress. So this is where patients who have had their lesions taken care of, say 10 years ago, when they used to cut them out with a leap, you know, we shortened a 5 centimeter cervix to a 4 centimeter cervix, and then we still have, and it didn't go away. Then we shortened to a 3 centimeter cervix, and we have patients with cone biopsies, they have a 1 centimeter cervix. I mean, so a 1 centimeter, like, yeah, you might have some preterm, you might deliver early. So what we usually do is once we've achieved a healthy pregnancy, we will send that patient to the OB and they'll send them to a high-risk specialist who will monitor their cervical length. If their cervical length is too low, they may put in a stitch vaginally in order to kind of hold the cervix shut. You know, it's debatable whether it helps or not, but if you put it in early enough, it doesn't really hurt. And then patients who have lost a pregnancy from too short a cervix may even go as far as getting what we call an abdominal cerclage put in to really cinch the cervix closed at the neck of the cervix abdominally in order to improve the outcome. So most patients who have had leaps will now get very aggressive ultrasound monitoring by their OBGYN, by their maternal fetal medicine specialist, and they'll make recommendations, should we put a stitch in the cervix in order to improve the pregnancy outcome? Because again, you don't know. You don't know. But if your cervix is short, you're definitely at risk for having a preterm delivery or an early loss in that second trimester once the weight of the baby starts pushing on that cervix. So again, I am ultra conservative just because we are actively pursuing pregnancy. Okay, we are doing in vitro fertilization. We are making embryos. We are putting them back in this uterus. Okay, it's just not, you're not just out there having intercourse and getting pregnant. Now those patients need to be watched as well, but you know, that embryo that I put in that uterus is a premium embryo. I mean, I had a patient who had a cervix that was like this long. I'm like, look, you tell your OB that she better put a cerclage in you because you've already had a miscarriage. And, you know, and I do not want that baby falling out at 16 weeks. Like, no way. I think she made it to 34, 35 weeks, but she did deliver a healthy little boy.
Oh, okay.
But I'm like, you know, it took us years and $100,000 just to get here. Like, no, this baby that I put in there that's stuck and is growing, it's a premium, okay? I mean, don't get blown off by an OB that said, oh, no, the randomized prospective trials, don't exist to say a cerclage helps. If we don't have a huge downside and the cervix is short, let's really have a serious discussion with our OBGYN, like, what's the downside to helping us out here?
And they can do it early on, right?
Early on. Early on is not going to be particularly dangerous. Now, we have to put it in on an emergency basis. Okay, where you have membranes popping through,
right.
Membranes up, and you have to kind of cinch the cervix. Like, yeah, that's bad. I mean, that's dangerous. You could pop the bag, and then you've lost the pregnancy. So, but put it on an elective, it's really relatively low risk. So, but these discussions you have to have your OBGYN. I don't deliver babies. I just make them, but I want the babies that I make to go to term. That's my priorities. Relation between high TSH and fertility. Okay, so a high TSH indicates that your thyroid gland is not functioning well. Okay, meaning that if your thyroid is underactive, it can affect the way your ovary functions. So if you find that you are overtly high TSH, hypothyroid, it is going to suppress the way your brain and your ovary talks. Okay, so that's the way it affects fertility. Usually once the thyroid is corrected by taking supplementation, the ovary will start to function better and you'll resume normal fertility. So that is one of the ways that we use it for fertility. Now, if your thyroid level is in this subclinical range, so it's not abnormal, but it's not where we want it for pregnancy, they have found that during your pregnancy, it may affect the baby's cognitive development. So, which is why we're very aggressive as far as replacing thyroid if the TSH level isn't exactly where we want it to be. We'll prescribe the thyroid hormone, extra thyroid hormone, which is really not harmful. And that extra thyroid hormone is meant to get the TSH into normal range, but that is for the baby, not for your fertility. If your thyroid is off getting pregnant and you're not getting pregnant, you're not ovulating well, then we need to replace the thyroid so your ovary starts to function better. So that's where that relationship is. Any other thoughts on thyroid, Dr. Dura?
It's so important. I mean, it's so important to get it checked, like a complete thyroid panel too, because some people do have issues even with the TSH normal. I mean, you see that, it could be subclinical, right? So, and PCOS patients especially, we see a lot. Thyroid.
Oh yeah, it's hyperlactin levels, messed up thyroids with PCOS patients. It's so common.
There's a question also. I think we had something here about small uterus.
Oh wait, at specific time in your cycle.
Oh yes.
You just don't get a pap smear when you're bleeding. That's the only thing with pap smear. I mean, even with the new liquid pap smears, you can get a pap smear while you're bleeding, but it's just best, as long as you're not on your period, there's no specific time to get a pap smear. Just get your pap smear. Make sure that it's normal every 3 years. A small uterus affect conceiving. And having PCOS, small uterus, estrogen, progesterone, letrozole, good option. Again, the uterus is a really interesting organ. Okay, so uterus starts off as the size of my fist. Okay. This little sucker can stretch. It's insane, okay, how much a uterus can stretch. So the development of the uterus is influenced by hormones. So if a patient is deficient in estrogen, so say you actually go into premature menopause, okay, and you don't have estrogen because your ovaries don't work. Your estrogen, your uterus, can be underdeveloped. So instead of your uterus being the size of my fist, it's half the size of my fist. It's just a little teeny nub, okay? Once you give that uterus estrogen, the little starts to grow. It starts to swell. It starts to grow because it gets the stimulus. So the uterus is an amazing organ. And even if it looks small, okay, once it's exposed to hormones, it will stretch. So what you have to be worried about, as we talked about before with the short cervix, is to make sure the small uterus doesn't have a short cervix, because the cervix is the mouth of the womb that holds the baby in. So that's really what has to be monitored when we're talking about a small uterus. But in general, your uterus, when it's exposed to hormones, will stretch well. Most of the time, patients with PCOS do not have small uteruses because they are making enough estrogen, because the little follicles in their ovaries produce estrogen. So that's not something that we normally see. But even if even if your doctor feels your uterus is a little smaller than normal, once exposed to hormones, it usually will stretch. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
I've heard more questions about smaller ovaries, but not much on
Small ovaries have a small uterus, I know.
Yeah.
What about if you're diagnosed with PCOS, but your TH is normal? I'm not sure what that means. Can you understand that one?
Thyroid hormone, maybe, or I don't know.
TH, or maybe thyroid hormone.
Maybe TSH.
Okay, good. Happy.
Hmm.
If your thyroid hormone is normal, I mean, it doesn't have to be abnormal. I'm just saying that they're they kind of sometimes go hand in hand. I had an HSG procedure done. I was able to input 45 cc's of fluid. Thank God I had no tubes blocked. That's a lot of fluid for an HSG, but as long as we got it through your tubes, no worries. Excellent. Let's see. We got. Did my first round of IVF in 35, retrieved 13 eggs. None were good. Do you know why? Hard to say. I mean, that's just, it's hard to say. Most of the time, 13 eggs in a 35-year-old, we can find one good egg. But there are environmental factors, there are medications patients can be taking, there's things they're exposed to, their lifestyle habits, so many different factors play into a healthy egg. I mean, I had a patient, I think her son is 6 or 7 right now, and lady made beautiful eggs. I mean, she made lots of eggs. Embryos, terrible. Comes into the office, and we're going to say, I said, your wife is only 34. I'm like, why? And I got, 15 eggs from her. Like, why are her eggs so bad? And we start going through everything. Does she exercise? No, she's moderate, blah, 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 nothing crazy. Does she do this? Does she do that? And finally, we get down to, okay, you guys don't drink alcohol, so you don't drink soda. Soda's inflammatory. Like, that could affect your body and the inside of your body. And so finally, I say to them, I go, what does she drink? Like, what do you drink? Like, I mean, these are just, I'm throwing out questions because I'm at a loss too. Mm-hmm. My eggs in a 34-year-old who stimulates fine all died in the lab. Like, this is just not making sense to me. And she says to me, oh, no, water. All I drink is water. And I get, water's healthy, right? Okay. I'm like, hey, where do you get your water from? Oh, the husband chimes in. We buy cases and cases of Publix water. Okay. I'm like, we might be onto something here. So, and this was pre-mouse study that was published out of New Jersey with plastics and poison. This is a while ago. And this was like in June I had talked to them. August this study was. And I'm like, I said, maybe your wife is poisoning herself with plastic. I'm winging it here. And how much water does she drink every day? Oh, at least 8 bottles of Publix water out of plastic. And I'm like, really? I'm like, interesting. I said, how about we stop that? I'm like, how about we? So I had her stop the water by an aluminum water bottle, use a filter on the refrigerator or Brita water filter thing, and stop using the plastic, stop microwaving the plastic, use glass, stop using Teflon, all these little environmental things. Restimulated her in 3 months, and we actually got embryos that grew to the end, grew to blastocyst. I put one in, she got pregnant, but she miscarried. Okay. And then we tried her one more time, 5 months plastic free. We achieved a beautiful blastocyst, froze another one, and she had her baby.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
I know. I really think it was the excessive drinking, of having the poison from the plastic water bottles, but it was excessive. I mean, this was like 8 bottles a day. I mean, this was excessive. Thinking this was healthy. I really think that played a factor in, her eggs and her not being good. But I mean, you drink out of 1 bottle a day, like it probably is not that effective. But this was really an over the top situation. But she did, eventually, have her son. But we could see the progression as the plastic, effect got into her body. So there's some patients, which is why I was 35-year-old, want my 13 eggs back. There's some people that are just much more sensitive to environmental toxins and don't know what they are. I mean, some people just like smells from your laundry detergent, that can be affecting you. Smells from, you like the scented candles, and that could be affecting, in a toxic way, your fertility. You're thinking, it smells so good. My house smells like strawberries. But, maybe that is affecting your fertility. I mean, and these things have been kind of, written about and suggested, but it's not everybody. So some people can, most people are fertile. Most people buy candles. I mean, but if you're the one who's susceptible to that, then maybe this is what's harming your fertility, and it's really hard to know. I mean, it's really hard to know. So a cycle that doesn't go well, you really have to start to examine all of these different things, in your life that are really out of the box. I mean, really out of the box, and see, could this potentially have been the issue? And I've had people who have eliminated things and have made these changes, and just like, wow, like that was night and day. That completely turned.
Yeah, even the acetaminophen studies that are coming out. I mean, they to me are terrifying. I'm like,
terrifying. Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, the
endocrine disruptor is basically what they're saying. And people take Tylenol every day. I have, actually we had someone come in who said, yeah, I've been taking it every single day. And she was about to stimulate. So I was like, wait.
I mean, some people give them the same medicine, they can do anything and they do great.
Yeah.
And they do great. And then other people, you're just like, why did that go so poorly? So, but sometimes there are things that we don't ask or we don't identify, or people don't think that's important, that are really important. It's fact as you to get into all these environmental disruptors and things like that. I mean, you're not trying to make people crazy. You're just trying to help them get pregnant. But when it doesn't go well, you just have to start thinking out of the box with what's going on here. Let's see. I'm 37, got 5 good, only 1 survived to biopsy. That happens. I can't say that that's not it's not a great result, but as long as the one that survives to biopsy is healthy, that was the chosen egg. I had 3 patients out of my last batch that 1 embryo biopsied. Okay, normal. You're like, wow.
Maybe that was the dominant follicle that was the follicle anyway.
That was the egg that was meant to be.
Yeah.
This is a big long question here. 2 failed transfers, 5 AB, mito 16, 5 AA, mito 20, normal. Switching to Ivf Cooper City, had an appointment November 18th. Are there any supplements IVF recommends I could start taking now? And I'm out of tested embryos. Do I have to, and we'll have to do another retrieval. Again, I'm a fan of, again, you made beautiful embryos. So I'm not really, I'm thinking that if you made beautiful AB and AA embryos, okay, let's not mess with anything, okay? Let's mess with what could have caused those embryos not to implant. I would look at your uterus more in depth. I would look at your immune system more in depth. I don't think I would really recommend supplements, because whatever you're doing, you made beautiful embryos. So let's not mess with that formula, okay? Let's mess with why those embryos didn't stick, and there's other things that we need to look at, okay? Yeah, so I don't really think I would start pumping you up with all sorts of stuff, because again, you got the embryo thing down. We will have to make more embryos, and again, but I don't think I'd mess with that. What birth control, if any, do you recommend for women who have low count, might have trouble getting pregnant? I say that because I was told I have trouble getting pregnant, and by the grace of God, updating pregnancy list. However, I'm not looking to have children the next year, so I'm not sure the best way to go about it. The best solution is truly no form of birth control other than condoms. What do you recommend? Okay, all has to do, well, okay, low egg count, number 1, don't wait. Number 2, if you have endometriosis, birth control is going to stave off the endometriosis, so you may want to consider birth control. If you're not ready to get pregnant and you've got a low egg count, we really should have a discussion about freezing eggs. Freeze eggs. If you know when you're pregnant, let's just freeze some eggs. I think depending on what your age is, that egg freezing can be a godsend. I mean, I had a patient who at age 36 came to me, wasn't ready to be pregnant, and so she wanted egg freezing. Her AMH level was 0.3. I'm like, not sure this is a great idea. Are you sure you don't want to buy some donor sperm and just get pregnant? Nope, I don't want to be pregnant. So we took her through, I think 4 IVF cycles, ended up with 15 eggs, got 3 eggs, 4 eggs, like sporadically. 15 eggs was our max. 5 years later, she comes back and she's literally perimenopausal now. Like she just has no eggs left. Her ovary is not working. She tried to get her pregnant with donor sperm before we had to resort to the frozen eggs. But it wasn't working. The ovary was just going rogue, doing its own thing, and really just showing signs of dying. And I said, look, we got to use your frozen eggs. So we used her eggs I froze 5 years ago, and she ended up with 5 blastocysts and 3 were healthy. And she's pregnant now at 10 weeks with the one. She's got 2 other left. But there's no way she would ever have those if she did not freeze at 36 years old. Like there's no way.
Awesome. Yeah.
So if you have a low egg reserve, I mean, you don't want to become pregnant, just freeze some eggs. The age of the eggs when they're frozen is the most important thing. Like age, you just cannot stress it enough how important age is. Like, so if I'm not ready to have a baby for another year, it's like, oh God, like you can't understand the difference between, age 36 and age 37, age 37, age 38. And it doesn't seem like time goes by that fast, but it does. It does. And the effects that we see in the laboratory on the eggs and on when we do the biopsies of your embryos, you're like, wow. It's mind-blowing that, we just, we have hair dye for gray hair, okay? Aging, we can hide the grays, okay? We have, Botox for the wrinkles, okay? We can get rid of the wrinkles, but I currently do not have anything that can help the 42-year-old egg become a 32-year-old egg. Mm-hmm. Like it just doesn't exist except freezing your eggs when you're 32 and then using them when you're 42. Mm-hmm. Like I don't have anything, except stressing the importance of age, and it's not stressed enough. I mean, it's really, really sad that even physicians, 1 in 4 female physicians suffers from infertility, or 1 in 8 in the population does. And physicians, we consider ourselves, again, I think highly intelligent, highly educated individuals. And we don't even realize that our fertility is finite because we're doctors. Medicine can cure everything, okay? And so we have physicians who come to me and like, all right, I want to do IVF. And I'm like, what? Like modern medicine should be able to fix everything. And they're even under the perception that it can. And unfortunately, it can't. And I wish it could, but they just didn't know. And it's not, egg freezing isn't a benefit in residency programs. It's not a benefit in most health plans. It's not something that's talked about. Your fertility being finite, checking how many eggs you have is not a routine thing that your OBGYN will check for you unless they have been done fertility themselves, and then they'll educate you. But if they had no problems getting pregnant, this is not on their radar. And I think this is just a conversation that we continue to try to make people aware of. But they see celebrities getting pregnant in their 40s and 50s and easily, oh, I just go to the doctor and they'll fix it. And I can't fix it. I wish I could fix it, which is where, age is so important. So.
And many of our patients have said they wish that they had known also, like, if their gynecologist would have mentioned something,
Right. And again, which is why I'm training residents. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to get this word out to the community. Okay. And the residents sit there, especially the female ones. They're like, I'm freezing my eggs. And freezing my eggs. Oh my God. How much is egg freezing? Like I got to freeze. or I got to have a baby in residency. I mean, you know, because again, this is especially as the OBGYNs, the OBGYN residents, I find it funny, okay? Because all these, you know, young ladies and men do, okay, all day long, an OBGYN resident, they deliver babies and prescribe birth control all day long. And then they come to my office and they start seeing these patients like, who are these people? Like really, that's these people, that is really what the you know, people who are training and coming to the office and seeing our patients do. Like, this is not their world. I mean, their world is just fertility. And again, 85% of the world is fertile. Okay, do admit that. However, what you, Dr. Duro, and I specialize in is those 1 in 8 couples, okay, that are struggling to have a baby. And, you know, that's what we're trying, you know, to help, and we're trying to get the word out that, you know, if you're having problems, you know, seek out a reproductive acupuncturist. They'll educate you. Seek out your OBGYN. And if your OBGYN doesn't give you the answers and do the workup that you want, come right to the fertility specialist, okay? We'll work you up. We'll try to give you the lay of the land. And people come, I'm just like, I just want to know what my fertility potential is. Okay,
Yeah.
that's there. I'll let you know whether I think you're going to have a problem or you're not have a problem, and we can check your fertility, you know, every year until you're ready to have a baby. Or we can just freeze some eggs for you, and you can feel comfortable, live your life, and when you're ready to use those eggs, come back and get them. I mean,
well, definitely. I think we are actually looking for an integrative gynecologist to kind of work with some of our patients who are already in perimenopause, who did IVF maybe 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and we started working. So I think that's really needed, just to look at things from a different perspective sometimes, you know, and see the whole picture. So that's
all right. Well,
you're doing that.
that were submitted, and hopefully I got to all the ones that were on the chat tonight. I am so happy that we could, you know, answer these questions for everybody. Hopefully we have helped to educate, okay, and hope to motivate patients in order to take charge of their own fertility and, you know, investigate things and, you know, keep pursuing it. Even patients that, again, their paper doesn't look good, if they keep that goal of baby in mind, they have babies. So, you know, you keep that goal in mind, you gather your team, and I am just supportive of all types of, you know, alternatives and other services to complement what I do as a physician, and all of our doctors are what we do at IVFMD to help patients, you know, achieve their dreams and to make families. So thanks to everybody for listening tonight. It was awesome. Okay. All right, Dr. Duro. I hopefully will see you as a guest next year.
Yay. Yes. Thank you so much for doing these lives and getting the word out. And thank you guys. And if you could forward this to your friends who are maybe, you know, contemplating things, getting help, that would be really much appreciated. And follow us with Dr. Ellen Wood is Dr. Wood's Instagram, and mine is FL Complete Wellness. So love to hear from you. So bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.